of victory and the agony of defeat.
Madison, great ball around the corner, Petticini, he beats them all! Junior Polar out wide, bumped away from Trindle, Sharks coming through, none of them can hold him!
Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Tip Sheet Podcast. As always, I'm your host John, also known as 4020. Joining me is my good mate Sixties. You can also call him Craig, I suppose, if you know him well. And we're back for our second video recording in the new edition of the Tip Sheet Podcast, mate. So we're getting used to our new settings, our new trappings. But as always, mate, how you doing?
Good, mate. Actually, we had some positive feedback about the switch to video. So that was a little bit of good news. So I was worried that we might scare some people off.
Yeah, well, I think we might have, but obviously not going to get feedback from them because they're long gone with our scary mugs on the digital.
Yes, but mate, it's been a busy week. Especially there was a few events with around the Eels, the PLC, AGM, the Eels official launch last night, and we'll talk all about that. But how are you doing?
Yeah, well, it's the calm before the storm, quite literally, isn't it, big fellow? With the Eels taking on Melbourne next week, they got the global bye in the preseason, so they're getting that final tune-up done. Jason Riles putting together that big team list for next Tuesday. So yeah, I'm really anticipating that big Tuesday news sort of drop there, and then otherwise doing pretty good, mate. Looking forward to the junior reps on the weekend. We've got a very busy day starting I think at 11 o'clock, 11:30 with the Lisa Fiola going all the way through to a 6 o'clock kickoff in the SG Ball. So a ton of coverage coming to you from TCT on the weekend, regardless of the fact that there is no NRL, no cup and no flag and no NRLW. So none of the four primary grades there, but plenty of action still from TCT. But yeah, before we get into the meat and news from the NRL and from Parradise, as always, a couple of bits of housekeeping. First off, shout out to the sponsors of the Tip Sheet, which is both Star Partners in Auburn and Parramatta. Greg and the crew have been there from pretty much day dot for TCT, and we have much love for them there. And then 60s also, our other main partners there, Parramatta Leagues Club, who we are very proud to be partnered with, bringing you coverage from both the junior reps as well as match day previews or match day pre-game shows and match game post-game shows. So really proud to be partners of PLC, entering into our third year there, 60s?
No, I think we're talking about our fourth year.
Fourth year, there you go. We've had so much fun that the time's blown by like that. So yeah, really proud of that one. And then as always, regardless of what platform you're watching or listening to us on, if you can give us a quick like and subscribe, helps obviously with those metrics and helping TCT and the Tip Sheet grow in our bold new digital era. So much love for that. Now, mate, I think that's all the preamble there.
Oh, I do want to mention, because we gave a shout out to Parramatta Leagues. They've got a big Vegas watch party happening there on Sunday. Now you can head to their website and register for some of the specials that are there with the food and drink. But they've also, as part of that Vegas watch party, they've got the boys from SEN out there. Spud Carroll's out there as part of that, so you can meet him. You can see how they go about their business of coverage. And so it all kicks off in Sturlo's. Head to the club for details on that, starting off with that the first match there from Vegas, which I think is an 11:30 kickoff. So be there nice and early at the club, enjoy a bit of food, some drink, lots of footy, massive screens there in Sturlo's, massive screens.
They've got that really cool dynamic screen set up there now. So you catch all the action at Sturlo's. So
so head to the club for more details on that and to register for, as I said, some of the specials that are there. And enjoy yourself out there. So I'm planning on dropping in myself. A big day out at Parra Leagues, Vegas watch party.
Very well said, mate. And on that note, let's get into the podcast with the news.
News team, assemble!
We're still getting all our audio cues fixed up for 60s on the back end. So on that note, I'm going to give him the prompt. But what's the latest from Parradise, mate? What's happening for the Eels?
Yes, mate. It was. Let's jump into first of all Parramatta Leagues Club, because that's the home of the Eels. They're the owners of the Parramatta Eels. They had their AGM on Tuesday night. There was three major things that was happening with that AGM. First of all, you had the results of the election for directors, and we've had the return of both Mark Jenkins and Phil Sim as directors. As people know, they have to stand down every 3 years and then stand again for election. The members voted them in overwhelmingly, so great result there for those two directors, and it allows the club now to continue with that really important Parramatta Live project. When I say allows them to do that, it's just good to have that continuity of the directors who have been working on that, and they're trying to get that development application in by mid-year this year. They'd love to have the new clubhouse itself built, which they're building on the site of the current outdoor car park. They'll continue to trade in the old club premises, but they want to have the new club built. I think their planning is for the end of 2028. So it's, having that smooth process is really important, and that's probably what the return of the directors means for the club in that respect. Also, there was Peter Wins, was one of the. Yeah, there was a resolution there to have Peter Wynn as patron of Parramatta Leagues. And you talk about overwhelming vote there. Peter received well over 1,000 votes. There were actually 32 people who voted against it, believe it or not. It's hard
couldn't have it be unanimous, but there's always
has to be someone who doesn't like something. 32 people, and I think that accounted for maybe just over 2% of the vote,
which would make it probably the most dominant voting resolution probably in the history of PLC, I'd say.
Look, probably was. I was sitting next to Peter in the meeting, and anyways, he hears the results. He goes, "Oh, what's that mean?" I said, "Means 32 people don't like you, Pete."
32 people didn't get a big enough discount at Peter Wynn's score back in the day. So,
and he quickly quipped, "Yeah, they're probably Dragons supporters." And then he said that again when he got up and made a speech, which was it was a great speech, very well received, and so that got through. And then there was also the 4 special resolutions that we spoke about with Greg Monaghan on our podcast, and I'm pleased to say, it was a big ask to get over 75% of the vote, which was needed for constitutional change, and every one of the resolutions was carried. So that means they can move ahead with those important updates and common sense changes to the Parramatta Leagues Club constitution. So, it was, in terms of the meeting, a very good meeting. We got great updates from the CEO of both the Parramatta Leagues and Chris Demu, and also the Eels in Jim Sarantinos. Really comprehensive, but at the same time, very, very easy for anyone to digest. And I think that was really important, because, you can get lost in figures and all the special issues that
or
they're
the
talking
minutiae of what running a mega company sort of the PLC is.
Absolutely. So, as I said, not only comprehensive but easy to digest, and overall a very good AGM. Now, that was followed up last night by the Eels season launch at CommBank Stadium. So we had all the players there and Jason Riles. There was obviously in attendance, there was a mix of sponsors, club partners, community club partners as well. There was also a number of supporters that were in attendance. Just a really positive night. It was a great opportunity for people in attendance to be able to mix with the players. Couple of bits and pieces that I'm happy to share in the conversations that I had. First of all, I was speaking to a player about the season ahead, and he said, "Look, a lot of people say at the start of a season, it's really exciting at the start of a season," and he said, and it is, because you're starting anew, you're looking forward to what's ahead. He said, but I can tell you right now, I haven't looked forward to a season as much as I'm looking forward to this one. So I think that probably says quite a bit about the mindset of the players, where they're at as it approaches 2025. Now, we're not going to get ahead of ourselves with any bold expectations. As I've said to you, John,
minor premiers. What are you talking
about? So what I'm certain of is that the Eels will improve. What I think they're a chance of doing is playing finals football, a chance. But I'm positive that they are going to improve and they will play a different brand of football. And, it was really pleasing to hear that because that was a statement that was volunteered to me.
It didn't require any leading questions or
no, none whatsoever. And as I said, the players were all in obviously a great frame of mind. They seem to enjoy mixing with everyone that was in attendance. Now, the interesting thing that I do want to report, and I don't want to take, I don't want to draw too much out of it. However, when you go to a lot of these events, the players have their time mapped out for them.
Yep.
It's just how it is with, like RLPA stuff. When their time is up, they're instructed, their time's up, so, that they should leave. And that way the club's compliant. Now, if a player wants to hang around, that's entirely up to them. And we saw that last year at the 10-year member event, where there were a number of players who did hang around and mix with the people in attendance. And what I will say is, at the end of the night, Dylan Brown was one of those, including myself, who were ushered out at the conclusion of the night. So there's a number of us were standing around talking, little pockets of people talking, and there, of course, security moves and says, "Okay, the event's over. You have to move on." And he was one of those people that was talking with some people in attendance that had to be told, "Okay, the event's over. You can move on." So I got to speak with Dylan at the start of the night. I cannot tell you anything about what he's going to do with his contract because I'll be upfront. I didn't ask him. You and I have known Dylan since
not quite knee high to a grasshopper, but when he first moved to the club in his junior year of Harold Matts,
yeah, since Harold Matts days,
and that's old Harold Matts under 16s and under 17s too.
Correct. So he was still 15 when he started playing at the Eels. He turned 16, I think, after the season was over in Harold Matts.
Yeah, birthday's
later in that year, but after the junior rep season was over. So, I'm not going to talk. In fact, I didn't even talk to him about footy, to be honest. I was just asking him about the wedding that he went to over in New Zealand. We were talking a bit about New Zealand and Waiheke Island, where the wedding was held, and what that was like. And then there was a fella that was there with us who had been involved in the manufacturing of Skittles. Now, that fascinated Dylan.
That is
to know.
Yeah, what an interesting job just to talk about.
Yeah, it's just the actual process, and he says he likes looking at that sort of thing on Instagram. How things are made.
Yeah, like these little videos, like the processing of stuff. That just, it's funny, isn't it? It's just natural conversations, some really interesting stuff. So that's funny.
Yeah. So as I said, didn't ask him at all about the contract. Didn't even talk to him about footy. I just, he's going to get the way I figure it is, he's going to get bombarded with that for the rest of the night, with people, talking to him about that. But the thing about Dylan Brown is that he's a really great conversationalist, and he will actually dig into like with questions to the people that he's talking to. And he's a really interesting character to talk to because of that, because he's genuinely interested in what other people have to say. So, far better to talk to him about everyday stuff than footy. So can't reveal what he's going to do. I still remain confident that he'll stay.
Yeah, and look, we'll get news in that front eventually. And knowing our luck, given that the legend of the TCT recording is pretty strong at this point, that come Friday morning we'll probably have the breaking story, whether he's coming or going, which would legitimately prompt an emergency pod. But as is wont to be with the Tip Sheet podcast, we will do our recording, and then lo and behold, some monster news, whether it's Eels or NRL related, will break. So be sure. Yeah.
It's bound to happen. But look, as I said, it was a great night. People, if you follow me on Instagram, I put up a quick video of the team being introduced last night. I'm sure there's going to be heaps of Eels media that will go out there.
I saw the pictures of the boys looking real sharp in their suits coming into
Yeah, so I'll put up some photos and videos that I took last night. Now, you know me, John, I'm not one for taking photos of myself with the players. That's just not who I am. I don't like selfies or that sort of thing.
Nickname,
and
your nickname around the trap is Selfie 60s,
Well, it's taken us long enough to get to putting our faces on the podcast, so that'll probably give people a bit of an idea about the reluctance to put the face in photos. I've never been a photo person or what have you, but I did take photos of other people with the players and sent those photos off to them and what have you. But I will share some of them. Now, I do have a bit of news for you, mate, because I caught up with our good mate Spiro last night. So he's absolutely smashing it on 2GB now, and he was talking with Joash Papali. Now I haven't quite got that pronunciation right and Joash explained to the two of us how it is pronounced. But what I do know that I've got right is the end, because there's no apostrophe.
Yes,
so
as opposed to Josh or Isaiah, who have the I apostrophe I, right?
Yeah, so that becomes E at the end.
E versus Lee. Yeah, Papali.
Yeah. So, and that's I'm sure that he's going to get it out there about, the proper way to pronounce his name, but that's the part to get right, is that it's not pronounced the same way as the names that have the apostrophe in it. So we'll get that clear. But anyway, got to catch up with Spiro last night. As I said, going great guns. The man has lost 16 kilograms as well. I mean, Spiro wasn't that big to begin with, but he's looking so fit and healthy. It was just great to catch up with him and talk about his year doing the podcast with us. So,
one of the legendary TCT alumni, isn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. So shout out Spiro if you're listening to this.
Much love out to Spiro.
And we'll do our best to get Spiro on for a podcast or two this year as a guest appearance.
Yep, that'd be great to have him back on board.
Yep. So, mate, I want to jump back to the weekend just gone and just get our final takes on that last Eels trial against the Tigers. What did you take out of it overall, now that you've had a few days to digest everything. We had our instant reaction, and that was pretty much how we felt straight after it. But now with a few days to reflect on it, what's your overall takes on that final trial?
From an overall narrative, one thing that is very clear is that if you want some NRL hype, you're better off losing badly in week 1 of the preseason and then winning in week 2 to get crowned by the NRL media as, you know, a top 8 contender or whatnot. Obviously, the Eels did the inverse, and not like people were picking us for the spoon after it, but I think there's a lot more crowning of teams like the Tigers and the Knights and the Cowboys. You know, the Titans, who had a dreadful week 1, they got absolutely pumped with a strong team against the reserve grade Broncos in week 1, and they came back and had a good win in week 2. So that's always funny seeing the media narratives being spun out in different ways. In terms of the actual game in the Parramatta Eels 60s, I think the big thing, as always, is that the Eels did get through this one unscathed. I think it was confirmed at one of the meetings that the Eels are pretty much, barring the obvious injuries, Sean Lane, Bailey Simonson, and Josh Adokar's on an injury, but he's not available. I think that we are pretty much all hands on deck, which is really nice. So that was obviously the biggest thing. But going back and looking at it, yeah, it was a scrappy game between two teams played in greasy conditions out at Leichhardt. You know, I'm not that far away from the stadium 60s, and it was drizzling all day, so it was certainly not ideal handling conditions. So that sort of explains some of our issues, but not all of them. But I know people were upset, and understandably so, of some of those defensive performances that we saw, and we called it out in the podcast. We listed the 3 or 4 forwards that had those individual lapses. That if that progresses into the season, that is going to be an issue. But you got to think that Riles and Sam Moa will be on top of that, trying to iron it out ahead of that game against Melbourne. So I'm going to give the coaching staff and the fellas the benefit of the doubt heading into round 1, because I think structurally, both against Newcastle and against the Tigers, what we saw from the defense on a sort of team or macro scale looked good. The cover defense was switched on. The actual alignments and the assignments were going, you know, play for player there, which looked good. It was just, you know, a couple of big fellas having some momentary lapses, and especially I suppose the one that would be very frustrating was the Galvin one, which I think was Kelmer, right? That missed.
Yeah.
Just because the tip sheet on Lockie Galvin would be, don't fall for his dummy. He is going to show and go, and that's got to be locked into your head every time you go in for that tackle. So they'll be better for it. In terms of the positive 60s, glowing about Isaiah Iongi, he looked fantastic. He looked $1 million. You know, just when we were moving on from Quinton Gufferson and the arguments for moving on from Guffo, for the, you know, the talisman that he was at the back and the titan he was for the Eels, because he's going to be an all-time number 1 for the Eels. Like, obviously there's the Mayor Ken Fournette, and in terms of pure talent, Jared Hayne, and there's a few other guys around there that have done great, but Guffo's legacy will stand as tall as any for the blue and gold. So you're looking to move on from him, and they're big boots to fill. Iongi's done a great job in the preliminary steps. I'm not, you know, crowning him yet, but what we saw against the Tigers was electric speed. That it's not just the speed; it's the ability to maintain speed while swerving and that subtle change of direction. Which you look at, like some of the best, like Slater. That's what they had that set him apart. And obviously Iongi's not Slater, but he does have that little quality to him that's going to be really fun watching him run off Moses and Dylan in particular. Will Penasini looked great. There was a big question mark there. He's switching sides. That's not an easy transition. When you think about all those little micro details when it comes to offense and defense that you have to get in your head in terms of your alignment and your first step and how you make your reads and adjust, going from right to left can be a big jump. And he looked really good down the left side, got through a ton of work, was very good defensively. I saw some neutrals trying to pile on to Zach Lomax, and this is going to be a running story, isn't it, 60s? That the moment Lomax has a bad or quiet game, I'll put him on the wing. And I'm not trying to be sarcastic, because there is merit to Zach Lomax being on the wing, and maybe it is his best position. But piling onto him after, 40 minutes at right centre, where he did not have his first choice half, who's not just a first choice half, who was a top 2 half in the NRL, in Mitchell Moses, where he just didn't get the opportunities to attack, is just, tell me you're carrying a card without saying you're carrying a card. You had that. You had your destination planned out, and you just had to get there no matter what. Beyond that, Jack Williams looked really good. I was a little bit worried because Jack's had not for any fault of his own, but just there's been so much positive talk about Jack, not just from your training reports, but from the players themselves. Like they've come out and put Jack in front and center. I think in the Let's Trot podcast we talked about it with Josh Adokar, the Fox. He said that Jack Williams was one of his standout preseason performers. He looked great. It's obviously going to need to translate to the NRL proper, but he looked mobile, agile, some bell-ringing hits, some nice on-ball involvement in attack. So everything you want from a guy who's going to be your sort of lead small ball middle forward. He looked really good. And then beyond that, Jermaine Hopgood, great to see him after missing out half a year last year. One drop, besides from that, he got through nearly a tackle a minute in the first half, which is crazy. Luca Moretti looked good. Sam Tuivasa, the big fella, didn't look bad. He'll want that drop ball back, though. The one that was a walkover try. And then I think in terms of the extended bench, the real standout player, the player that's probably been from day one of the preseason, one of the best, Riley Smith. If you look at preseason narratives, you're going to be hard pressed to find a better story than Riley, not just this year, but in any of the recent years, for a testament to how much you can help yourself in the preseason by putting in and delivering in the training paddock and on the field. And I think Riley's going to be a deserved beneficiary of that moving forwards. I got to think that the club's going to find a way to squeeze him into one of those top 34, whether it's T30 or D4, or D5, D6, whatever you can go with the dev contracts, slots, and get him into that depth option, like legitimate depth option from any point in the season.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, we need him to be, in the full-time squad all year. And secondly, we need him to be a selection option. Yeah, because
agreed. The moment one dummy half goes down, it just puts so much pressure on the rest of the roster. And then if you're just talking from pure form, like Joey Lussick didn't do much wrong in the trials. Like this isn't a criticism of Lussick. It's just that Riley played, with his hair on fire. He played his absolute pants off and has legitimately put himself in the conversation to be, in terms of on-field results, the dummy half too.
Yeah, and just like Reid Marnie did in his debut year, which I think from memory
right?
was 2018,
yeah.
And that was a similar, not entirely similar, but there were similarities between the two because in that particular year, Reid only had an NRL preseason up till Christmas, got extended beyond Christmas. He then landed a dev deal coming out of that Christmas period, which then led to his NRL debut partway through the season. So again, that it was all about training that hard that it can't be ignored.
Exactly. You put yourself on the map for the coaching staff. And
and when I say training that hard, I'm not just talking about conditioning, because I mean in that regard, young Riley's off on another planet when it comes to. I mean,
breaking Quentin Gutherson's Broncos record is crazy. So
yeah, absolutely.
He put it on the post sessions in the trials. He's in terms of dummy half. You hear the term terrier used a lot, right? Because they are ankle biters and they're always in it. Riley was always in it, and you saw that against Newcastle, hustling for the hot ball on the ground. Should have had a try in the Newcastle game when Kelman had the ball stripped out and he used some heads-up play to dive on the live pill. But yeah, he forced a line dropout in the same game because of hustle. He's been very busy defensively, crisp service from the base of the ruck.
Yeah, one of the things that was from that very first open training session that they had at Fairfield, I started getting messages from people. Who was that fella that was leading the running that was being done? Because his photo had been put on by Eels media from the start of the pre-season, but there's a difference between a photo on a website and seeing the player in action from a bit of a distance, but still seeing the player in action. And so, yeah, lots of questions that I had sent to me about who is this bloke that was looked so good at the open training session. So, in talking about him as we are right now, we don't want to overhype, and maybe it sounds like we are, because Riley's got, and the thing about him is his head's screwed on right. I'd say he's ambitious, but he's also realistic and knows that his background up to now is mostly Jersey flag. I think he might have had a game or two for Penrith.
I believe for Penrith he played a couple of games in Cup,
Yeah. And, he was at that point as well towards the latter period of last year with the Eels New South Wales Cup as well. But, his background is mostly in age football. So he's had a great preseason, and he's a player to watch in New South Wales Cup. And I think he puts himself into that genuine depth chart. And if the coaches want to use him because he's in the depth chart, he actually needs to be eligible. Well, we'd like to see him eligible before round 11. Maybe realistically, a debut comes later in the year, but you don't know what happens with injury. Brendan Hands, we have touch wood that nothing happens in that regard. But if in the coach's mind, and I'm saying if Riley's moved past Joey, then the coaches couldn't use him because Joey's in the top 30, and players aren't eligible unless they're either in top 30 or dev list,
or you get an exemption, which is
is on the basis of you haven't got anyone else that you can use. So, and the Eels do having an experienced NRL dummy half in Joey Lussick. So that's the situation that they're in. John, I'll be very quick with my takes, because there is an element of repetition what I'm going to say in terms of my immediate reactions to the game. Happy with the systems. Thought some players made errors that were individual errors rather than system errors. And if you complete at around 60% and you have as little possession as the Eels did, you're going to struggle to win any game of football, let alone a trial where players are being, taken on and off, and, fatigue doesn't become a factor. So it's just one team coughing up the ball, the other team having a lot more possession and getting to run their plays a lot more.
And it was a golf in possession too. The fact that the Tigers only end up winning by 2 tries with a 56 and 75th minute try really belies the fact that they had 57% of the ball. So, look, the Eels are far from great, but the fact that they were still competitive for the vast stretch of that game is a testament to their fitness, I suppose.
Yeah, and also, look, it's a great reality check before the season starts. If there was any player, and I doubt that there would be, but if there was any player that was getting ahead of themselves, or if the group was getting ahead of themselves, it gave the coach an opportunity to go, look at this, look at this, look at this, look at this, and then to work on it at training before round 1. Because we know what the Melbourne Storm are going to deliver. Forget their trial results. Even though they
not
weren't
anything into that.
No. There may have been some things that concerned Bellamy, but we know the Storm are always going to turn up, especially in round 1. They've got a proud history of that. But, at some point, records end and winning runs come to an end. And I'm hopeful that the Eels are going to do that. But we'll talk more about that next week, John. Let's jump now into the results. There was only one result from junior reps last week, but let's wrap up the Eels news. Now, I just started off, and I'm going to get you for most of the takes on this. But let me just start off with, if you can extract a win with 52% completion rate, we're talking miracle. there.
46% of the ball, and of that 46%, you're only completing half of it.
Yep.
I mean, they've been lovingly badged to cardiac kids by myself and some commenters on TCT. I don't think my heart could have taken 3 more junior rep games after what we saw in the SG ball last week. So thank goodness for the buys and the Fiola, the Gale, and the Mats. Look, this ball team, they've got a bit of ticker to them. Last week against the Sharks, we saw them rally back to score 2 late tries to steal a win, and they entered round 4 meeting the top of the table undefeated Rabbitohs. Home game for the Eels, but Rabbitohs very much in form. And look, I don't think they could have played well. That's a lie. I'm preempting my lie. I was going to say I don't think they could have played a worse first half possible. But Larima Rokasuka's try in the 24th minute did salvage a bit of momentum. But there was the South Sydney Rabbitohs scored in the 8th, 11th, and 14th minutes, and the run of possession was close to 10 minutes with the Eels. Well, they did touch the ball at one point when Rokasuka dropped an attacking bomb between tries 1 and 2, I believe, when Lancelot Tovio scored for the Rabbitohs. But that was the only time the Eels touched the ball. It was just non-stop South Sydney possession through repeat sets, penalties, 6 agains. It was just a torrent of possession. And at 16-0 after 14 minutes, I was like, all right, the route's on. Like the Eels, it's going to be 30 or 40 points for South Sydney at this point. How much can they limit the damage? And then they finally,
the fellas aren't switched on today.
No,
it's going to be one of those days.
The errors of the ball handling, the defensive lapses. It was, like you said, it was one of those days at the office. And then they finally got a little bit of ball. I think it was an incorrect play of the ball, not for not striking at the ball, which has been the big crackdown. I think it was for a misaligned play of the ball, 45 degrees. And I think it gave the Eels some random possession inside South Sydney's half, and that led to a really nicely executed play down the left edge where Doug Howard put away Larima Rokasuka. Sorry, Larima. I should not be tripping over that one. So a bit of early redemption for Rokasuka. Had a couple of errors in the first half, one of which I thought was a strip, to be fair. But, when the whistle's not going your way because of all the other stuff that you're doing wrong, that's sort of the pile on there. But then whatever happened at halftime, I don't know what sort of speech was delivered, but the Eels came out a completely different team. Dom Ferrugia sparked the comeback early on in the second half. He scored in the 45th minute, which was essentially a mirrored concept from what we saw for Larima's try. Just really nice execution, Howard sweeping, the winger sort of straddling the sideline, creating that space. And then that was quickly followed up with a back-to-back try where Elijah Shane Tapa'u, the big forward on the interchange, was the beneficiary of some nice work between Lorenzo Talataina and Doug Howard. Lorenzo slipped a ball either through contact or sort of late line to Howard, who head down the sideline, down the left, kicked ahead nicely for the big fellow who composed himself really well and didn't snatch at the ball and dove on it to score. And then a double for Rokasuka put the Eels in front by 2. And he had my heart in my mouth for that one, Sixties, because he centered the ball and got real close to the dead ball line at one point, but got it down safely. And then Bo Lucian iced the game, but it was really on the work of Josiah Funaiuta, who I thought was an absolute colossus in this game. Josiah went into the goal line defense, spun through the contact, slipped the offload away for the big fella Lucian to dive over. And Iuta actually been rung up by a really good hit earlier in the game, and he had a short time off. But we don't get individual plyometric 60s, but I reckon he would have put 200 metres on the ground in this game. He was phenomenal. He was running the ball pretty much every set for the Eels, sometimes twice a set. Big carries, big efforts in defence. And then as the tide started turning, it was on the back of his shoulders. When the team was just sort of collapsing around him, he was being a real pillar. So that is the sort of game that you sort of expect from a player with the credentials of Funaiuta, who's obviously been flagged for stuff down the line for the Parramatta Eels and comes into the SG Ball this year on the back of a really healthy preseason run in the NRL. And
that's right.
He missed the last couple of games. So I believe that was injury, maybe suspension. I don't know. I think it was injury because I didn't see anything wrong in the Newcastle game that he did there. But that was a very, very impressive game from the captain.
Yeah, you mentioned about the beneficiary of the preseason. Of course, he did. He participated in the NRL preseason, I think, just up to Christmas. I can't recall that he was back after that Christmas period, because then they have to, both he and Dom Ferrugia, who were involved in the NRL pre-season, had to go back and spend some pre-season time with the SG ball, especially with them kicking off on the 1st of February. So they needed to get a little bit of training time with them, even though they're familiar with a lot of them from last year. But, you know, they both seem to have shown the benefits of an NRL pre-season. And I wanted to give a shout-out as well to Nathan Howlett, 4 try assists.
He's been really tidy at the back.
Yeah.
And I suppose he's really stepped into the boots of Arpa Twiddle nicely, hasn't he? Very similar in that regard. Both just no-nonsense, get the job done really on time at the back. How he projects in the future will be interesting, because he's not a superstar fullback in the juniors, but doing a job like that means that you can often transition to a different role pretty handily. So Nathan's done a really good job at the back. I thought Dom Ferrugia was really good in the second half too. Started really getting stuck into that ruck work, got a couple of crucial calls by fighting for the 4 forwards on his stomach. Obviously scored that try too. Corey Lee had a really nice line break in the first half that led to an error, which you felt pretty strongly was interference in the play of the ball, and I tend to agree.
To me, it just looked like, you know, he's getting up to get a quick play of the ball, and he got a little bit of a bump from behind. Yeah. It doesn't take much if you're standing up, but you've got that momentum.
Exactly. After a 40-50 metre line break, the whistle should be pretty sharp for the defence as well. So.
Oh yeah, and you know, if you blow a penalty there, the chances are you've got to send the bloke to the bin, because it's a professional foul.
Yep. So
the fact that he didn't draw a penalty, I thought was a fairly tough call. But we're not going to talk about match officials, because the officials at that level are also learning.
Yeah, very, very much. Yeah,
you know, they're on their trajectory up, and we get a little bit shocked and stunned with some of the things that were missed. I think there was a game. I think it might have been last week's game, and I can't remember whether it was the mats or the ball, but you were doing the call on it, John, while I was covering the girls' game. And there was the line dropout.
The short dropout against Cronulla. Yeah. Oh my goodness! I don't know how that knock on was.
It was crazy that and I think the referee might have got the call from the touch judge.
Yeah, he would have had to have deferred to his touchy there for sure.
But so you do see some rough calls, but yeah. You know, it's a learning experience for them as much as it is as well for the players. Now, of course, they're all on an elite trajectory, so you want them to be showing their best and showing that they're just like the players of the future, that they're officials of the future. But you know, you got to, I guess, you got to take the good with the bad at that level. So, but look, overall, mate, they maintain an unbeaten record.
Yep.
It was a big win to get that win over South, because
South was good too. Like they were a very handy team. So.
They seem to go in their shell.
I think the second half with the Eels just getting really physical rattled them a little bit. Yeah, and it was probably one of those games where you didn't want halftime to come at South Sydney. You want to just try and get that roll on, even with the Rokasuka try in the 24th minute. You would have been pretty confident about being able to get that roll on going. But, you know, the Eels have a lot of game changers in this team. Lorenzo Talatona was very much in his element. Overplayed his hand a couple of times, but he was causing the Rabbitohs all sorts of issues in the second half. Lincoln Fletcher sort of took a back seat to that really nicely. You talk about balance in the halves, and sometimes one guy's got the hot hand, and Fletcher just, you know, focused on getting the organising and the kicking done. I thought Lockie Koinakis had his best game of the season. He looked really good around the rock. And then, you know, Josiah Finauta was the pick of the forwards and the pick of all players on the field, honestly. But Petrus and Popo, I really like what they're bringing. I can't fault the effort levels. Just the ball handling is a little bit spotty at the moment. So if they can get their mitts on the ball better, they're going to be big time contributors for the Eels. So it's a very good team, Sixties.
First of all, I want to mention that there's some great media around the game that's there on the Eels socials. I think it's on the website. I'm assuming it was taken by Tim Gray, who does a lot of the media around juniors
Tim,
and the pathways. So yeah, shout out to Tim for the great work that he does. He's always there at one of the games on the weekends, and it's a bit hard with the girls and the boys at different venues and sometimes at the exact same time. Yeah, that then becomes impossible, and it's obviously it's been a challenge for us this year, John. We haven't been able to sit together at a game and digest the game together and have a chat because we've been covering different venues. So it's been challenging. That was actually my first game in person at the boys' game last week, and I'll be out there at Granville again this week. But yeah, I wanted to mention that video that's out there. It covers.
You can
get a bit of a
on. The handle is the Parramatta Eels Juniors, I believe, on Instagram. You'll get the locker room footage, which is always a great insight into the squad.
Yeah. So so you get the locker room footage, you get a few grabs of what's happened in the game, and then locker room footage again at halftime. Really good grabs. And just overall, John, the one thing that I hope that the team adjusts a bit, and again, it's part of the learning process, is learning when not to pull the trigger with a pass, because there are a lot of really promising attacking moves, and I think the line breaks might have been 7-2 or something like that in the Eels' favour over South. So there was a lot of threatening that was done in attack from the Eels, but that last pass would go astray, and in a lot of instances, I thought it was a pass that didn't have to be thrown, like take the tackle. Now, what had happened the week before in the winning try that the SG Ball team scored, it was first of all there was the long break. I think it was Anders Johansson made the long break, took the tackle.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was the perfect.
So 10 meters out for the line. You've got support that's sort of streaming through, but they're not quite in the best position. A few tackles up the sleeve. He looks around. He takes the tackle. Then, when the pass to go to the centre of the field in front of the posts, grubbers along the ground, and you're thinking, "Oh, this is a horror show." Now, instead, Ryder Talangi very calmly just let the ball, I think, hit his shins, pick it up, took the tackle, didn't try to do anything. And I thought, bang, bang, there's two pieces of mature play there. The ball then goes from the ball from Ryder, goes right, ends up going, I think, from Lorenzo to Dom. I think was that the way that
spun to the right.
Yep. For the winning try. Now, on the weekend just gone, we had lots of moments where that final pass was thrown that didn't need to be thrown. Take the tackle, set up for the next play, because they weren't last tackle plays where they were throwing the ball and trying to advance. It was just trying to get the try scored with a tougher pass. So yeah, that's probably my only comment there on what you'd like to see, because I think that contributed a lot to that 52% completion rate.
Yep.
And also the fact that, there's 7 line breaks to 2 and the winner secured right at the end. So anyway, mate, that just about covers our Eels news. So I'm over to you for your intermission music.
Yeah, well, look, one day I'll be innovative and imaginative when it comes to this segment. But for round 0, we're in Vegas, so naturally you've got to go with the cheesy Vegas tune, 60s. And I think I went for the OG Elvis one last year, so we'll sort of keep it in line with that and go for a bit of ZZ Top or ZZ Top, I suppose you want to give it the English affliction there, who actually sampled the King and not Gufferson, but Presley on the vocals here. And I go with Viva Las Vegas again. So let's hope I get this one right, because we're sort of sifting through the technical difficulties that come with the video. But Make sure I get it.
Lucky
right.
we're not actually going completely
live yet. Yeah, so we'll have some funny errors when that happens. But yeah, Viva Las Vegas from ZZ Top. Yeah, so let the die stay hot and Viva Las Vegas indeed, 60s.
Oh, mate, I love the ZZ Top. The beards of Dusty Hill and Billy Gibbons, and of course the irony of the one without the beard being Frank Beard. It's
just perfect, isn't it? Just, great band, ZZ Top.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, mate. Well, we're going to jump into now the NRL news, and let's start off with the stoush between the Raiders players over there. I mean, look, I wasn't surprised entirely when I heard the names of the players that were involved. It just feels like it just, I mean, what goes on in Vegas stays in Vegas,
apparently
but
it doesn't anymore. Look, I'm not going to call it a storm in a teacup, 60s, but I think the media had a pretty hot trigger hand on this one. When the full details came out, it certainly wasn't as bad as it was initially reported. Not a great look for the game, but it was obviously some, I wouldn't say mitigating circumstances, but there were some compounding circumstances with the whole cock up by the hotel and their sort of registry getting all the bookings wrong and leading to double bookings of rooms. And then that obviously spiraled into Morgan Smithies and Hudson Young. I don't know which one was the dissenting party, but obviously did not want to bunk with their best mate, as they were very trying to push they were best mates, after that. But fair enough, didn't want to bunk with them. And it sparked into some sort of argument / I don't know if it was an all-out brawl. But what it sounds like was the issue was that after that, hotel security finds them and they don't turn up in the database because of the computer problem. And then, so it's like, well, what are you doing in our hotel fighting? And then that then hilariously led to them eventually getting back in, but then getting put into the Panthers accommodation before finally getting their own rooms. It's kind of like the hangover for the NRL, right? Just like a series of bizarre events leading onto each other. Not a great look for the game, but I'm not going to call it a storm in a teacup because it is a bit more serious than that. But come on, guys, why are you just? I get it's frustrating, but why are we brawling over a hotel room?
So my question to you now is, do both the NRL and the Raiders parlay that into some sort of advantage where the NRL gets a little bit more media coverage for what's happened, and B, Ricky Stewart can use that as an extra motivator?
Oh, Ricky's going to have it as bulletin board material, even though it's his own players making the mistake. He's going to say, look at how much bullshit we've got to deal with from the media. They're out to get us. No one rates us. It's going to be bulletin board material for Sticky. It'll be interesting to see if they can convert it into an actual siege mentality, because footy and professional sports is funny like that. But they're definitely going to try and use it as fuel. Like they'll be fired up on how we've been treated. Like, it was nothing. It was a storm in a teacup. But I don't think either player is going to be suspended. I don't think there's been an official notification from the NRL about that. And certainly the inclination from Stewart and the Raiders was that they're not going to be sitting these players out, which I'm not too upset about. Like, it's to miss a game for that kind of thing would be frustrating. Especially when we're pretty, in general, pretty aggressive with no-fault stand-downs for serious stuff. So I think that by contrast, we shouldn't be hammering these guys for stuff like that. But I don't know if it's going to help them in round one. They've got the Warriors they're pretty reasonable opponents. I think the Raiders will be favourites going into this one, but maybe that'll be the extra motivation they need to ice a close game.
You know, the only thing that's missing in the media coverage with this is referring to Ricky Stewart as former Eels coach and current Ricky Stewart.
Yeah, yes.
That would then make it the perfect media coverage of anything that he's involved in. Okay, let's jump into I'll come. I was going to talk about the actual Vegas matches first. Actually, we will. We'll get into some NRL signing stuff and what have you after that. So let's go through the matches on match day, which, as I said, if you want to go and join a crowd watching this, head to Parra Leagues to their Vegas watch party in Sturlos and check out go to the Eels website for more details on that and how you can register for it. But John, it kicks off pretty early in the morning with Super League Clash.
If you want the full docket from the Vegas slot, you got to get in there early. So you're going to have the big brekkie out at Parra Leagues. I don't know what's.
I should mention, I think there's a match on today, and it might be kicking off soon, or it's about to kick off between the USA and Greece.
That's the extended docket. There's a ton of actual international games going on between now and the NRL stuff. So yeah, you can catch those things on what, Fox, or is it being live streamed on NRL?
It is being live streamed on NRL, and of course we give a shout out with that because our good mate Steve Georgalis, who is the Eels NRLW coach and the Elite Pathways coaching director, and we'll try and get his.
We're due for a chat with Steve soon.
Yeah, we are due for a chat. I spoke to Steve just before he went to America, and to line him up. Originally we were planning to line him up for a podcast this week, right now, and he said, "Mate, I'm off to Vegas," and I'm like,
"I'd love to do it, but I'm a little bit busy, guys."
The Greece International, and so I said to him, "Look, we'll aim for when you get back." So we'll talk to Steve as a mid-season update about what's been happening with junior reps. We'll then do one for end of regular rounds and preview of the finals, and then one at season's end, just to get up to date with how things have been for the season as a whole. But anyway, we mentioned the Greece USA match and extend our best wishes to Steve, who is the national coach of the Greek team.
But yeah, if you want to watch catch the first game on that Sunday docket. I don't know what Sterlos is offering for breakfast 60s, but it's going to be hopefully a big brekkie, because Wigan Warriors and the Warrington Wolves will kick off at 8:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Savings Time. So
I don't think the club's open when that kicks off. So their coverage starts with the Canberra game.
So there you go. So you get the big brekkie at home then. Maybe zip out to Macca's and get a hash brown and a McMuffin of your choice, or to your local cafe.
But don't fill up too much.
But not too much. Yeah. Because the Super League starts it off at 8:30 a.m. and then at 11 you'll have the Raiders and the Warriors kicking off the NRL games. So that'll be when the Leagues Club is ready for coverage, and that's followed up by an exciting test match between the Jillaroos and the Roses, Australia versus England in the women's space. So 1:00 p.m. kickoff there. And then the final game, which is, I suppose, the big game in terms of the NRL, is the reigning Penrith Panthers, or reigning champions, the Penrith Panthers, taking on the Cronulla Sharks, 3:30 p.m. kickoff. So afternoon kickoff there. You can have your feed in between the Jillaroos and the this game here, I reckon, 60s, if you've timed your sort of meals perfectly. And
now, mate, I haven't been keeping too up to date with the Super League. But do you have a tip on that match?
Look, I think that the feedback has been that Sammy Burgess is doing a good job with Warrington, and they are actually, I believe, looking at the ladder now, they're 2 wins from 2 starts. So Wolves have played 2 and won 2, and the Warriors have played 2 and won 1. So if you're talking early season form, Sammy Burgess's boys are definitely in for a chance here. But Warrington have been one of the benchmark teams for a long, long time in the ESL. They've got a couple of former Eels there, so if you've got a soft spot for the likes of Jay Field and Bevan French. And speaking of Bevan, he's been doing a killer job over in the Super League, hasn't he? Sixties, really in his element there. So I think the Warriors are going to be hard to beat here. Well, not hard to beat in terms of like strong favourites, but I think they do have their noses in front.
Yeah, look, I think I'm going to agree with you on that. As I said, I'm not completely up to date. I'm normally about a week or so behind with what's been happening over there in the Super League. There's just not enough hours in the day, is there, John, to cover everything rugby league, including the Super League coverage.
I'm just trying to see if Sam Burgess got his visa cleared, and I believe he has. So he will actually be able to coach his team on the sideline or in the box, which would be a pretty big boost for Warrington there. I'm not sure what the visa issue was for Sammy, but it was one of the big stories coming into this week was that he wasn't actually in Vegas with his team.
Yeah, look, he has made a difference to that Warrington team, but mate, it's pretty hard to go past Wigan, really.
Yeah, just like I said, one of the benchmark teams in the Super League, and you throw in a couple of former Eels there, and it's hard not to be backing them this week.
Yeah, and look, it's interesting that Bevan French didn't take up any opportunities to return to Australia. Has really made an impact at the 5'8" role as well. It's. I mean, Gutho did it in a season where he transitioned from playing on the wing to ending up at 5'8", and to a certain degree, because Bevan had played some fullback with Wigan, and then he's ended up in at 5'8". But he's certainly created a legacy over there in English rugby league, and he's not the first Australian that's created more of a legacy in England than they did in Australia. I'm trying to think of there was a winger way back in his name might have been Bevan as well. It will come to me, John. It will come to me. The winger Australian winger that had this incredibly long history over in England. I still think it's great to see that he's going so well because he was a super talent with Parramatta, no doubt.
Brian Earl Bevan?
Sorry?
Brian Errol Bevan, maybe?
Yes, Brian Bevan. Yep. Yeah, I knew the name Bevan was there. And if you got the details in front of you, it was some ridiculous number of tries, let alone games
the
that he played.
Wing Wizard. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
So what was the number of games that he played over there?
Was played wing, broke try scoring records in England. What have we got here? He scored a world record 796 tries.
Yes.
688 appearances. Ken Irvine, eat your heart out.
Yeah. That's what I said. It was insane. And when you see the photos of him when he's older, he looks like a 60-year-old man running around in a jersey.
Yep. He's a Randwick boy. There you go.
Yeah. He may have played. Did he play first grade in Australia before he went over there?
Played rugby union for New South Wales schoolboys. Played for Eastern Suburbs in 1941. Then he joined the Navy, which, as we've spoken about with some of our former Blue Gold Alliance players, has impacted careers significantly in that period, right? 60s. So he joined the Navy during World War II, and then went over to Warrington in 1945, so post-World War II, and played for 16 seasons. Went on to score nearly 800 tries in 688 games in English football. Was Warrington's leading try scorer in every season from 46 to 47, and then from 60 to 60. In that window, sorry. And then helped them win 3 championships, 2 Challenge Cups, and I don't know what it is in the context of the modern game, but the Lancashire Cup as well. So added some nice silverware for Warrington.
They talk about, they joke calling people 40-20, you know, when that say, you know, they look 40, but they're really only 20.
Yeah.
They would have rugby league would need to invent a 60-40.
For the wing wizard. Yeah, he was a 60-40 for sure. Yeah.
How old was he when he retired?
That's a good question. Have I got the information here? See if I can pull it up, because when did he finish playing? So born in 1924, passed away at age 67, so too early, but as is wont to be when you're in that generation. He played through to 64. So he played 1964 from, 1924. So he was
40.
40, yeah. So that's for that era, that is crazy old. Like we're in a stage now with professional athletes of all the benefits of recovery and prehab and rehab and nutrition are playing through to like late 30s and 40s, and obviously there's freaks like LeBron James in the NBA who are just timeless in that regard. But doing that in his era is very impressive.
So look, I mean, there's hope for Daly Cherry Evans yet. He may still get through to 40, but yes. So next game, the Raiders come in and see if they can put all that stoush behind them and get the win.
Yeah, so Raiders versus Warriors. I'm just looking at these two teams. Obviously, RTS is in the back line, but in the wing slot, not in the fullback role. Sean's Nickel Clockstar in the one there. What do we got here? So post Sean Johnson for the Warriors 60s, which means Luke Metcalf and Chanel Harris-Tavita teaming up in the spine there. James Fisher-Harris will have the C next to his name, not game. The big off-season recruit for the Warriors in the front row. I don't know what to make of the Warriors. Disappointing last year, 60s. Recruited pretty well here with Fisher-Harris, but they did lose Fanua Blake, so it's a little bit of one goes in, one comes out, right? So I know you might have, as an independent opinion, you might have different thoughts on Fisher-Harris versus Fanua Blake, but I think they're close to like for like. Obviously, Fisher-Harris brings the championship-winning mentality from the Panthers. For the Raiders, KO Weeks gets the chance to lock down that fullback role. He was a revelation for the Green Machine last year, one of those real big breakout players that helped them be surprisingly competitive. And then only one of their high-profile young recruits features in the starting 17. Well, obviously, the 17 aren't starters, the starting 13. But only Sevilio Tamale is in there amongst the three New South Wales under 19s they recruited, which was obviously our own Ethan Sanders, and then, the Lockford 60s.
Miles.
Yeah, Miles Martin, who was also a former Parramatta prospect. So only Tamale gets the nod in week one. But their backline's pretty handy. Weeks, Tamale, Tomoko, Chris Savage. Ethan Strange was obviously very good last year. He'll partner Jamal Fogarty. Joseph Tarpanay, the captain in the front row, another outstanding bookend there. Hudson Young and Morgan Smithies will be named to play as per Team Wish Tuesday. I don't think they're going to be have the rug pulled out underneath them before Sunday, so expect them to play. And then I look at both teams' benches. I mean, Josh Papali is now in the back nine of his career, and he's an interchange forward here. But Owen Paddy, Simi Sasangi, Arta Mariota, not exactly household names for Raiders. Mariota's shown some promise, though. And then Dylan Walker, who's carved out a nice utility role there in the 14. Jackson Ford, Dimitri Vaimanga, and Leka Halasima. So not exactly strong benches for both teams. So it'll be interesting to see who can get that momentum going in this game.
Look, I think it's a case of the Warriors have really got something to prove after last year.
True.
I think Fisher-Harris is a big addition because where I think he differs from Adam Fanua Blake is that mentality of a winner. Now, I'm not saying Fanua Blake's not a winner, but you're talking about a bloke who's been part of a four-peat premiership team and has been, in that engine room of a team like the Panthers. That is a massive addition for a team. And given that he was passionate about returning to New Zealand and now he's got family around him, it's given him, you'd have to think it's given him another level of motivation And it's not that he wouldn't have been motivated playing for the Panthers. I mean, you wouldn't find probably too many better props in terms of that attitude of a winner. But I think he's a big addition for the Warriors. I think the staff and the players have got a point to prove. The Raiders, they're probably a couple of years away, I think, from being at their peak. If they're a team on the rise, and they look like they're a team on the rise given their recruitment strategy. And they've certainly got a bit of pace in their team. But I'm going to go the Warriors. I think the Warriors have. I think they will start the season better than the Raiders, and I still have some question marks on the Raiders. So
I'll tip opposite. I'll go for the Raiders. I just feel like they've got this is the sort of game where they might thrive. Sort of a mid-table opponent, a bit of backs against the wall mentality because of self-inflicted scenario. But yeah, this does feel like the sort of game Ricky would love to gloat about in the press conference. So I think they might be fired up for it.
Okay, so we're going opposite with that.
We will go opposing picks there.
Yeah, we then got the Women's International.
Yeah, so unfortunately for the fans of the Blue and Gold, no representation for the Gillaroos, I believe. Mahalia Murphy in the extended team list, but not part of the expected 17. And Abby Church not included in the squad this time. But I think we'll get our first look in 2025 at Paige Travis for the Roses 60s. So
yes,
that'll be very exciting to see, and hopefully she can pull through unscathed. Or if in the worst case scenario, if she does get nicked up, hopefully it's not a serious injury ahead of the time to recover for the NRLW preseason. But look, I hope England can put on a show here and be competitive 60s. But the Gillaroos, it's an imposing squad, and they are sort of in all-conquering territory at the moment. And it's going to be hard not to see them winning by multiple scores.
Yeah. I think it's pretty straightforward. You're talking about a really powerful side in the Gillaroos. They're on another level to the English team, and that's not disrespecting the British team in any way, but they're on another level, and it's just strike power all over the park with the Gillaroos, and it's really the growth of the NRLW has a lot to do with that.
It's a testament to how foundationally solid the NRLW is. That if you're participating in the NRLW, there is just a certain standard that as a player you are held to now as a baseline, and it means that when you take the best of those players and put them in the representative scene, that they're going to have an inherent advantage just from being in a sort of higher standard gladiatorial weekend sport. So the Gillaroos,
and that's and look, I think it's a good move for the English with a number of their players now moving to the NRLW to get the playing experience out here, because the New Zealand team benefit from their players being involved in the Australian competition. So it's, to me, it's a no-brainer that the British, some of the best British players come out and participate in the NRLW. So I think it's also obviously then the no-brainer that we're both agreed that the Gillaroos get the job done.
In consensus here for sure,
Yep. Okay, which then takes us to the final game of the day, the headliner.
Yes, the reigning back-to-back premiers, the Panthers. Gosh, surely they can't go 5 in a row. But yeah, the Panthers meeting the Sharks, 3:30 p.m. kickoff here. Look,
John, just on that, I wonder, if there was the level of media coverage back in the 60s that there is today, I wonder how often people on podcasts would have been saying, surely the Dragons can't win another.
Do it again, surely.
7 in a row is not possible. 8 in a row is not. No, they're not going to win 11 in a row.
Yeah.
So, I mean, who knows?
Could you imagine podcasting back in the day with the old-fashioned radio voices? And surely the St. George Illawarra Dragons can't win 11 in a row. They're a mighty squad, but the competition this year is going to be much stronger. be a great listen there. Look, the Penrith Panthers backline, not so sharp in around 160s. I mean, obviously champion Dylan Edwards in the custodial role there, but young winger Casey McLean on one side, Paul Alamotti on the other wing, even though he's more of a centre by primary trade, which means Isaac Tungor, who is a very good player, in one centre spot, and Luke Garner in the other centre position. And the Panthers have very much been able to make a pretty good meal out of piecemeal backlines and forward packs in the past just because of how good their systems are. But maybe opportunities for a good Cronulla backline to strike there. You know, Kennedy, Stone Street, Ramian, Iro, and Mulatalo. They'll get their looks against this Penrith backline.
Yeah, if you had an opportunity to play the Panthers, you'd want it to be in round one.
Yeah.
With that, look, that's probably apart from during the year when they might play a game without their origin stars, you probably couldn't get a better time to play them.
Yeah.
You know, and they've got young Cole in it.
Yeah, Cole winning the shot. I mean, it wasn't so much a win as it was a TKO, I guess, because obviously Blaze Talangi hurt his shoulder playing for Samoa in the international season, so he missed the vast majority of the physical aspects of the preseason. So, yeah, Jack Cole getting the first look there. Be interesting to see how he got a taste last year, but he's going to be feeling the pressure because Talangi comes in with that. When you're a big-time recruit like he is, there's not like an air of entitlement 60s, but just there's a natural expectation for him to be in that frontline squad. So Cole's going to want to hit the ground running and keep the hound at bay there. That is Blaze Talangi at number 6.
Yeah, absolutely. So who gets the job done? I don't want to dive too deep into this because we've still got to cover the end of the NRL news.
Power through the rest of the podcast because we'll get out of hand.
So look, I think I'm actually going to tip the Sharks.
Yeah, I'm actually going to be upset here. I'm going to spring the upset too. I think, look, would not be surprised if Penrith win because they are just absolute champion squad. But as good a time as ever to get them in week 1, going to Las Vegas. I think Sharks will be wanting to try and get a statement win under their belt, given all the sort of the annual accusations of being flat track bullies and not being able to stand up to fellow title contenders. So even if it is like I know it's mean to say it to them, but this will be a weaker win in the context of being a title contender because it's week 1 in Vegas. But they'd still want that. So I think that they've probably got the close to the full strength squad here, as opposed to the Panthers. I mean, we mentioned Fisher Harris for the Warriors, but Fanua Blake on debut for the Sharks. He'll give a bit of oomph to their front row rotation. They've lost Royce Hunt, but gained Fanua Blake, which I think is a pretty big net gain in terms of consistency and also big moments for a prop forward.
He's an X factor prop forward.
Yeah, exactly. He's got that kind of footwork and offloading ability that you see of guys like Junior Barlaw, they're very rare in the NRL. So, and he's in that same mold as Junior. And Ice not starting though, 60s. What do you make of that? He's on the interchange. Scott Sorensen and Liam Martin. Well, Martin obviously getting a nod ahead of him, being one of the premier back rowers in the game. Sorensen is obviously he's carved out a really good niche at the Penrith Panthers, but a bit surprised that he got the nod over Ice in the back row there.
Well, what role is Ice going to play when he comes on?
Maybe middle then, yeah. Because what is it? Dane Laurie, Isaiah Papali'i, Matthew Eisenhue, and Luron Patea. Now, Luron's a half, isn't he? No, he's a prop. I was thinking someone different. It was in the trials. I'm sorry, Luron. So they've got 2 middles, the utility and Ice. So Ice can sort of be deployed as either the third middle or the rotational wedge there. So it'll be interesting to see how he's used. Anyway, let's keep the docket pumping, mate. What's next?
So next, mate, we've got a couple of bits of signing news. So young Plath has extended at the Dolphins.
Handy player, had a great year.
Yeah, and former Eel, we get to say the former Eel tag with this. Morgan Harper has linked with the Warriors. So he's originally from New Zealand. So that's a bit of a homecoming for him, even though family's been here because he's been here, for a very long time in Australia. But he gets to return home and he has a top 30 deal. Prior to that, after leaving the Eels, he linked with North Sydney, and that was going to be put him into the Storm system, and he was a chance of picking up a top 30 deal with the Storm, but it didn't quite happen. And just as he was, about to commence the season, staying in the Storm system, and they were keen to keep him, the Warriors stepped in and with a top 30 deal for him. So he's moved over to New Zealand and gets to continue his rugby league journey over there. The other one is what's not necessarily surprising because it's been hinted at for some time, but Carl Uluwapu has parted ways effective immediately with the Bulldogs. And he's a major talent who's been dogged by injury.
Geez, the Dogs made a lot of good moves in the last few years, but paying a $500,000 transfer fee for Uluwapu, only for him to play a handful of first-grade games and then cut him and be at loggerheads of him over a medical retirement, has got to be one of the big misses for Phil Gould and Serraldo over at Belmore. Look, we've spoken about the Dogs and their recruitment strategies across plenty of podcasts, 60s. They're a lot like the Roosters, playing pretty fast and loose with their playing roster, recruit aggressively, and then equally cut aggressively if you don't fit what they're looking for. You'd think it would catch up for you with the salary cap, but it seems to be working for Canterbury, right? They keep generating cap flexibility, keep themselves in the market for big name players as they continue to look to build and consolidate.
Well, I think Phil Gould had a bit of a recruitment advice and contract advice for the Eels through the week about, what was happening with the Dylan Brown scenario. It's, interesting. I think, I know he's a media commentator, but if you're someone that's involved in the contracting of players,
there's a genuine conflict when you're doing.
Absolutely. And whether his criticism is warranted, relevant, whatever the case may be, I think there's an obvious conflict of interest.
Especially when the Dogs could very much be a suitor for Dylan too. If they're cutting Uluwapu, something they've got cap space, we don't know if they're interested in Dylan. And the conceptually, the idea of a Burton Brown halves pairing is hilarious in terms of skill set, because it's two mirrored skill sets that don't give you any of the game management sort of stuff that you'd want from a seven. But look, we're not the first to point out the conflict of interest between Gould's media responsibilities and his general manager responsibilities at Belmore. It just leaves a bad taste in the mouth, doesn't it, 60s? Gould obviously has plenty he can bring as a media pundit, but when he's wearing the hat of being the GM at Canterbury, and just how aggressive he is in that role, because like I said, we've seen so much roster turnover at Canterbury and at Belmore. I would like to see it reined in a bit. I agree.
Can you imagine, like, the CEO of any other rugby league club jumping into a podcast and being critical of the recruitment processes of a rival club? It's, I don't know. It's just, and as I said, it's not, this isn't a question about whether it's valid or not.
Yeah, if he was just Phil Gould, the Channel 9 media pundit, he could rip into the Eels as much as he wanted to. Like, he could, shame us for player options and for not getting his hand iced over, whether it's right or wrong, like whether you agree with it or not. I would have no issues with him putting the boot in. I might not agree with it. I might agree with some of it, but he'd be fully entitled to be commenting on it. But when you're also the general manager or whatever his official role is at Canterbury, there is a big conflict of interest. So, he is such a titan of the game in terms of his media profile that it feels like he can cast that long shadow and get away with it. But I do wish the NRL would clarify and really set some boundaries here, because it's not just because it's Parramatta. He's done it for other clubs too. It's just I feel like it adds a layer of murkiness that you don't want to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So, John, that just about wraps up the NRL news. What I'd like to do now is to jump into what would normally be a separate podcast, which is the preview podcast. But the only previews that we're able to do right now is actually the junior reps. We've got 4 games to get through, so we might really power through
we'll
them.
smash through it. So
yeah.
Cool. As always, catch all your coverage on TCT. We'll have the live blogs for all 4 games running on Saturday. 60s, me and you will split the coverage, but it's going to be a big one. So we start at 10 o'clock a.m. out of Cronulla High School, obviously in the Shire there. Can catch us on New South Wales Rugby League TV if you've got the subscription. Otherwise, join the conversation on TCT. Our girls and in both grades and the Mats coming off a bye, so they'll be recharged. So in the ladies' pathways, we're taking on the Sharks, naturally being in the Shire. Eels look like this. At fullback, Ire Sevilla. On the wings, it's Sienna Bonello and Freedom Crichton Rapati. In the centres, Georgia Wanzi and Cody Tuomaseve. Halves partners are Sharon Latapu and Tamike Withers. Front row sees Leonia Vey and Isabella Bell as the bookends to Valley Marchonga dummy half. Kaizen Morgan Pritchard and Mitzi Cairns are on the edges with Katia Duff at lock forward. The interchange is Alicia Misa, Meadow Sivo, Kavinia O'Callaghan Ahio, and Evelyn Kwendu. So Eels gave their extended roster a bit of a look against Manly before the bye 60s. It's not quite what we'd seen in terms of their, I don't know if you can call it full strength, but the lineup they used in the first couple of rounds. But a lot of the big hitters are back after the bye. And they're taking on the Sharks, who, I know we're trying to be rapid here, but the Sharks sit in 5th place here. Eels are in 3rd, but that's by virtue of points differential, chasing the Roosters and the Bulldogs. No shocks there. So Sharks 2 wins, 1 loss. Not doing too bad in their open into 2025. So the Eels have their work cut out for them, but they've certainly got the talent to take this W.
Yeah, look, I think it's going to be an interesting contest because with respect to the Eels' first 3 opponents, this is actually the first test that they've had because the Eels have gone and the
Raiders do have a win now. They've polled finally, but the Seagulls and the Bears remain winless on the season.
Yeah. So I think this is a good test for the Eels team. As you said, they rested a lot of players last week. Well, maybe not so much rested as they used the extended roster because it's handy to get those players the experience during the season where they can. So, look, I can only tip a win because I'm seeing, first of all, the talent that's in the Eels, Lisa Fiola Cup team. They've got strike players in key positions across the team. They play a good brand of football, and probably it's like what we've seen in a lot of the junior rep teams. It's only their own errors that hold them back a bit.
Yep.
So
I know it sounds so academic and elementary, but any coach that can get their charges to like a 75% completion rate in the junior reps is going to go deep into the finals.
Yeah, absolutely.
The reality of the grade is so much talent, but the finer details can get lost in the contest. So any team that gets on top of that has such an advantage.
Now you can basically put the same comment to the Tashigal who we're about to talk about in a moment. But with Elisa Fiola, when they're executing what I call Rugby League 101, which is in a set, driving up through the middle, through the forwards, get to, play for, start creating a bit of something with, the getting it to the edges. It's really good to watch, mate. It really is. And look, and that's not to say they haven't got players who can do second phase play, but when it's just some good traditional rugby league, they do some damage to the opponents. So if they just execute that aspect, as I said, they've got the strike players who can create something out of nothing. Be it, from a great example is Bailey Marchong out of dummy half.
Yep.
She seems to have a good eye for when to run, when not to run, and very fast out of dummy half and creates a lot of opportunities. But look, they've got a great spine there, and as I said, when they're creating that havoc up through through the middle with the pack. They're generating those opportunities. And can I just say, you would hate to be one of those opponents of Freedom Crichton Rapati out on the wing.
Likes to steamroll her way down that right edge.
Yeah, she got a mean fend on her. She does steamroll away, and herself has created opportunities getting into dummy half in yardage and just blasting her way through the opponent. So anyway, tipping the Eels win there. I'm sure you're doing the same there, John.
Yeah, I'll back the Eels for sure. I think in both grades I'm going to be spoilers for the Tash Gal, even though it's going to be another tight contest. I think the Lisfield will get the win.
Yeah, okay, which takes us to the Tarsha Gale.
Yeah, 11:30 a.m. kickoff, same venue, Cronulla High School, Sydney, as with the other games. Catch it on TCT and Bar TV. So Eels look like this: at fullback Dallas Graham Wivel, Nellie Thomas and Aaliyah Scrivens on the wings, Jessamine Aloali and Avina Rakoma Ngata in the centres. Sammy Lee Gunn Tawai and Aaliyah Sufan are in the halves. Armani Lee Avae and Tess McWilliams, the prop forwards, with Roy Muir at dummy half. Fontaine Tafua, Matoisha Kalepo and Riverly Arlo round out the forward pack in the back row. On the interchange, it's Ava Jones, Kylia Gray, Taylor Falanico and Alana O'Loughlin. Extended roster, Lilietta Pooley and Anahira Payakau. 1v4 here, 60s. This is Eels top of the table versus the Sharks in a top 4 clash. The Sharks have dropped 1 game, if my ladder reading is correct here. Yes, they've dropped 1 game from their 4 games to start the season. So Eels 3 wins, 1 bye. So this is going to be a really good hit out. Hang on, that was the wrong one there. Eels 3 wins, 1 bye. Sharks 2 wins, 1 loss, 1 bye. So yeah, they've still only dropped the 1 game. But yeah, should be a really good game here. But look, amongst all the 4 Pathways teams, the Tash Gal have been playing the most complete football. They've looked the best week on week. They come out the bye, and they can look. The bye can be a boon, or it can be a bit of a trap, depending on like how your team handles it, how the coach approaches it, how the squad handles a week off, sort of getting out of rhythm. Some teams love it and come out energized, and some teams come out a little bit lethargic. We don't know how the Eels are going to look coming out of this one. It's a new squad, new year, so you only get the 1 bye in the junior reps, and you got to make it count. But I will be tipping our girls to win this one. They've looked so good for all 4 rounds, but all 3 games so far.
Yeah, they've exceeded the 40-point mark in all 3 games, and they haven't been perfect. They haven't been faultless. You know, there's still aspects of their game that need to be tidied up, especially around completions. But John, it's going to take a good opponent to get over the top of the Eels pack for a start.
Oh yeah, the pack is just very, very good.
Yeah, and then of course you got the strike power that's out there with the team, and they're just playing a really good brand of football, and they're very one-on-one.
Yeah, they just play like really strong for the middle. Their shifts to right or left are very quick, at pace. They attack with options, and the opposition struggle to go off them.
Yeah, well, they've got a group of players who can also play some heads-up football. You know, like they're not
in our structure.
Yep. Absolutely, and that's the best way of putting it. You know, they can play in and out of structure. I mean, and when you see the shifts happening, I mean, we've spoken about this before. We've covered the Tarsha Gale competition since its inception, and the difference, the way that the players advanced over the years.
Yeah.
You know, what is it? Is it 9 years that it's been running? I'm just trying to think. It's
have a quick gander because was it 2017 or 2018 that we saw it incepted? It was 2018. So this is its 8th year of competition.
Yeah.
So rapid growth from a limited format 9-a-side to full on 13-a-side shortly after, and yeah, just the scale up has been incredible, and it is a big reason why the NRLW has been as successful as it has. Is that the pipeline, the pathways have been very helpfully fed across all the clubs. They've done a really good job with the Tarsha Gale.
Yeah, this is a talented group, in the Tasha Gale
Yeah.
team.
They look. You don't want to count your chickens before they've hatched, but they could go deep into the finals. They've got legitimate reason to think that they can be title contenders after what we've seen in the first month, but there's still plenty of football to be played.
Yeah, and look, and that's right. You don't want to get ahead of yourself, but just as a point of the skill level, there were 2 tries in their last game that I covered where the winger, Aaliyah Scrivens, dished off like backhand offloads.
Yeah.
Where like
The
one
Gidley
where
flick, yeah.
Yeah, the Gidley flick, one which was actually the full try assist, where she passed off to Aaliyah Sufan for the try, and it was literally right on top of the try line. But she'd made a run down the wing, cut back infield, was getting tackled, little backhand flick for the pass, and Sufan goes over for the try. And then I think it was from in the kickoff set, the Eels made a break through the centre, and she's popped up in support down the middle of the field. And again, is being tackled this time around the quarter line. Literally the same pass is delivered to support runner, and then I think that 1 or 2 passes later, the Eels were over for the try. But that's an example of the skill set that's there now in the team, and those passes were actually the perfect passes under the circumstances too, because of how she was being tackled and where the defenders were. So, look, the Eels get it for as far as I'm concerned. And of course, this is round 5, and it's a 9-round competition. So this is actually
It's all go
the hump.
Yeah, it's a hump mark. This is where the ladder starts shaking out big time.
Absolutely. So. Mate, now it takes us on to the Harold Mats, and the Harold Mats is probably the team that we'd like to see be a bit more consistent in what they're delivering, because they've only had 1 win, they've had 2 losses, and one loss was a particularly bad game against the Roosters. The other one was a win that got away from them against the Sharks. Yeah. So they really they can't afford to let any more points slip away, especially, you can write off that Roosters game as they weren't good enough on the day and, got belted physically in that game. Not saying that if they face the Roosters again, they couldn't turn that around, but you put that down as the Roosters just far too good on the day. Last week against the Sharks, to my mind, they were the better team. They were in control, but then key errors when they don't need them presented tries, and especially the last couple of tries. So, I'll leave you to run through the team.
Yeah, battle of the West between the Eels and the Panthers. Neither team in a position on the ladder they'd be happy with. You mentioned that we want to see more from the Eels 60s. They're 1 win from their 3 games and 4 rounds, and it's the same for the Panthers, who have got 1 win from what have they got? They've played 4 games, so they're even worse in terms of win percentage than the Eels. We look at the teams here, though. 4:00 p.m. kickoff, Eric Tweedale Stadium, home game for the Eels. Again, coverage on TCT and Bar TV. For the Eels, Riley Davis reprises his start at fullback after looking pretty sharp in round 3. Kobe McCloskey, off his hat-trick in the same game, will be on the right wing, I believe, with Danny McBride eastbound and down on the left wing there. With Cyrus Bloomfield back to bolster the centre ranks, and Chris Mawala in the other centre position. Talon Rosati and Zane Alamadine are in the halves. Another big boost for the Eels 60s, and this one is significant. Stephen Nunn back in the front row gives the Eels a real alpha in the front row there. Chase Attard will partner him in the front row with Billy Farnene getting the start at dummy half this week. Michael Noah, Kasinga Noah, and Samuel Polly round out the usual suspects in the back row. Hayden Bell will be the dummy half utility option. Curtis Brown, I think, getting his first game of the year, alongside Strantz Skamkul and Jermaine Fa'afiu. And then on the Penrith side, I spotted an interesting name, 60s, or was it in the SG Ball? I saw it. No, it is the Harold Mats. Where is he? Is he in the extended roster? Yeah, extended roster for the Mats and the Panthers is a Tyrone Mairoa. So I don't know if that's any relation to Tepai, but not a common surname. So it'd be interesting to find out about that one. But he's not playing, or at least he's not named the player. He's in the extended roster. But look, very talented team for the Eels here, 60s, but they have not put it together with any degree of consistency this year. You mentioned that it's round 5, the bump mark or the hump mark for the season. They've got to go. Like, it's a top 8, so they're only one game outside of the 8. It's not like, oh my God, Klaxon's firing, we're in trouble, DEFCON 0. But they've got to get moving. They've got to get this win. If they drop this one, then we're going to be concerned.
Yeah, so the Eels beat the Panthers in the trial game up at Windsor, and convincingly so. Even though it's a trial, they looked just a class above the Panthers, out-muscled them, out-skilled them, and, came away from that thinking, okay, the Panthers are traditionally pretty strong, obviously, but they maybe have been proven that trial form to be accurate from their perspective, in that, they've struggled to get wins. But if you're taking a Panthers team in junior reps for granted, you do so at your own peril, because they wouldn't want to be in this situation, and you'd have to think their players are not producing what their best form is. As far as the Eels are concerned, look, a couple of big inclusions really in Cyrus Bloomfield and Stephen Nunn. Stephen hasn't played since the first round. We're assuming he was injured in that game. He scored the winning try in that first match, and so we should point out that the Eels are lucky they actually have a win to their name, because they won literally on the buzzer in that first game of the season, and it was via Stephen Nunn. I think his partnership in the front row with Chase Attard was very instrumental in the form in that round 1 game. I think they're going to be critical to this. I think it's a big inclusion of him and Cyrus. Cyrus at centre is an interesting selection. I can actually see why they're doing that. I think there are times in organising the defence or defensively that Cyrus has still got a little bit to learn, but he's got such strike weapons in attack. Like, he's an awkward player for opponents to tackle. He's got what is deceptive pace, because he's got like that loping sort of running style. So yeah, I don't mind that move to centre for him. Whether that's a long-term option, short-term, don't know. But as you say, they've got to get their act together. And again, it keeps coming back to the errors. You don't expect perfection. You're not getting perfection from an NRL team. Our NRL team in the trial completed at 60%. But if you're going to complete and struggle with completions every week, you're going to struggle to get the wins. So they just got to lift it a bit. Anything over 75%, as you said, is they're going to be hard to beat with the strike players that they've got there. So we just need to see that happening. John, anything you wanted to add?
No, the team is talented. It's just a matter of getting that on-field discipline going. I have no idea what to think of the Penrith lineup. 60s, I know you mentioned that we beat them handily in the preseason. It is a home game for the Eels, and on that basis, I will tip them. But it's a bit of trepidation, because if they lose this one, I think there will be real alarm bells ringing.
Yeah, I'm the same as you, mate. There is that trepidation, because it's just over the first few rounds. You watch and think there's an error coming soon.
You know how good they can be. You see these patches of play where they just look phenomenal, but then there's just errors and penalties and set restarts, and it just compounds so quickly.
Yeah, and the thing is, you don't need it to. With the younger referees that they have in junior reps, you don't need it to look as if you've got any discipline issues or that you're likely to make a mistake, because then the 50-50 calls go against you. you know, those lost balls that, like you pointed out, you know, will that look like a strip? Or, you know, if you've got someone that's been making errors, the refs more, if they don't quite see it, they're just more likely to think, well, that was another mistake, rather than, you know, the ball's been stripped. So, you know, just little things like that. And especially when, as I said, even with discipline, with penalties, you don't want the ref to be offside with the ref at this level, because
momentum is not just for teams; it can also be for the official. And
correct,
they can get sort of caught up in the flow of the game in that regard. And obviously, the ideal is for them to be able to adjudicate every call on its own merit, but that's difficult when you're young and learning. So don't give the referee a subconscious reason to make calls against you. And now our Mats have been guilty of that by way of getting in their own way. So look, I think that they win, but I don't tip that with like a huge amount of confidence. But in saying that, they certainly have the talent to win well. So I'm hoping that the bye week helped them and they come out fit and firing.
Yeah. So, mate, it brings us to the SG ball. I don't want to spend too much time on the SG ball in terms of the players that are involved, because we've covered that
in the review,
probably in depth in the review, right? So they're also in action against the Panthers. What was the kickoff? Is 6 p.m.
6 p.m. kickoff. So another late kickoff in the rep. So this one will be done by about 7:30. It's 35-minute halves plus a good 10-15 minutes at half time sometimes. So yeah, if you make sure you have your dinner plans around this one, either side, guys. This one will run deep into the evening. Eels come into this one undefeated in the season, 60s, half a win behind the Tigers and the Raiders on the ladder. So they're on 7 points to the Tigers and Raiders 8 points. Eels with that draw against the Roosters obviously being the differentiating factor there. But for and against, not too bad compared to those teams, just 2 points behind both of them. So right in the ballpark where they need to be. The Panthers, on the other hand, have had 4 games and have won just 1. So not a great start for traditionally one of the powerhouse clubs in the junior reps, but you can't take them lightly. Eels look like this, though. Pretty much the team we expected, 60s. Nathan Howard at fullback, Dom Ferrugia, Lorem Rokosuka on the sidelines, or running the sidelines, not on the actual sideline itself. Anders Johansson and Corey Lee in the centres, so unchanged 1-5, unchanged 1-7. Lorenzo Talatona and Lincoln Fletcher in the halves. Bo Lucian and Ryder Talangi alongside Lockie Koinakis in the front row. Josiah Finrau-Utah starting on the right. Trace Beattie getting called into the starting team on the left. Max Popo, the lock forward. So it looks like Big Chris Petrus is injured or suspended 60s because he's not part of the lineup this week. That means Tom Summer, Wesley Picotti, Elijah Shane Tapau, and Kai Wilson are on the rotation. Aiden Kaborian and Phoenix Tawasa, the extended roster there. Of note in the Penrith lineup is back rower Tyson Sangalang, former Parramatta player there, former Aussie schoolboy, one of 4 Aussie schoolboys for the Eels last year, the only one we lost. So hopefully Tyson plays well for the rest of the season, but doesn't have a great game this week.
That's a nice way of putting it.
Yeah.
So we wish him well, but we don't wish him well when he plays us. No. So he's a good young bloke, Tyson. Mate, the Eels get the job done with it. They're undefeated. Again, it's a case of when things have got tight, they found a way to win. They've been, as we've also talked about, at times they can be their own worst enemies. But they're a team that they've got that inner resolve, that resilience to be able to eke out a win when it looks like it's not likely. I think their ceiling is a lot higher than what they've shown so far. And, they'll get the job done this week.
Yeah, I'm tipping them to win pretty solidly. It's the Battle of the West, so you could see Penrith getting up for it. But on exposed form, on what we know this team can do in terms of the individuals and on a team basis, we haven't seen their best football in totality yet. And I'm hoping that we can start to see it moving forward, starting with this game. So Eels to win this one. Obviously, naturally we're tipping the Eels clean sweep in the junior reps this week, but there are going to be some interesting games with Cronulla putting up good resistance in the ladies space, and then just the Mats being equally matched after poor starts to the season for both the Eels and the Panthers. So stay tuned for the coverage there. 60s, join the conversation through those games on TCT. We always love hearing from our fans It's always just good to get, the different opinion, the different point of view on these games, because we're sort of caught in the tempo and the flow of the game, and we're trying to call play by play, which means we see things a little bit different to when you can just sit back and watch the game. So always keen to get those opinions, mate.
Well, in my case, I'm missing half of it with vlogging, so I am rather keen on seeing other people's opinion. John, just very quickly before we wrap things up, like the NRL, there's no trials this week in the Flegg or the New South Wales Cup. People would be aware that I went out to Lidcombe and covered the trials in Flegg and New South Wales Cup. I didn't want to spend any time really dissecting it because they were trials. New South Wales Cup had a lot of Ron Massey Cup players, had a few boys that dropped back from the training squad, but yeah, a lot of like the real depth sort of to New South Wales Cup, that players that will be playing New South Wales, playing Ron Massey. The Flegg were in complete control, ended up, so Cup lost by 2 points. New South, the Flegg won by 2 points. The Flegg were in complete control. I think they got a few injuries during the game. I'm not sure how that's going to play out as far as the season's concerned. But they ended up, I think, with maybe one fit player on the bench.
Ooh.
And in a trial, that's
impressive work to be that short-handed in a trial.
So they ended up, they conceded a few tries, even conceded the lead close to the end, but ended up just working play upfield, and like they had all game, were able to get a pretty easy try to get the win. But it really wasn't too much to talk about with that there. I think we'll wait until we get into the season proper and we see what team they trot out as a full strength team before we can start making assessments on that. And of course, when it comes to New South Wales Cup, and that will also be interesting selections, because there may well be players who, with everyone or close to everyone being fully fit, will miss selection and might have to play Ron Massey Cup. So,
and the other thing too is week 1 bye for New South Wales Cup, so it could be a few players like Richard Penasini that maybe turn out in the Flegg for the minutes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure you'll see the age eligible players like Josh Lynn and Saxon probably turning out for them. Maybe not Saxon, but you might see Arpa.
Yep, I would expect Arpa, Lynn, maybe Richard Penasini, although I sort of see him as maybe a frontline starter in Cup, so I don't know if they want to preserve him or get minutes into him. It's hard to tell, but we'll find out on Tuesday. It's going to be an exciting Teamless Tuesday. Yeah.
So anyway, mate, that's another marathon episode. What do we come in at? We must be close to 2 hours.
Yeah, it's a bit fragmented due to our stop and starts, but it's going to be a big one, so I couldn't tell you off the top of my head. But yeah, we apologise. It's the nature of having that one podcast in a condensed week. Doing news, previews, reviews, all on the one.
Yeah, and it wasn't the sort of week where we could split it into two.
Naturally lend itself, didn't it? Yeah, it was just.
Yeah. There wasn't enough. I mean, there wasn't really enough in the preview to have a dedicated preview podcast for junior reps. So yeah, it just ended up being a really full podcast. So we thank you if you've got through this with us. We thank our sponsors, Star Partners Real Estate, Auburn, Narellan and Parramatta. We thank the great supporters of Junior Rugby League, who also support our coverage of Junior Rugby League and our match day appearances, that being Parramatta Leagues Club. And don't forget, you've got the Vegas Watch Party there on Sunday. Head to the club for more details, but you can catch SEN in action there and with Spud Carroll, and it all is there from the start of the Raiders Warriors game. So make sure you're there for that. The massive screens in there in Sturlo's. Thank you, John, for another fine podcast. Hopefully you're getting used to our faces on this podcast. If not, you've got the video, the audio options. And as I always say, go you mighty Eels.